Hello everyone, this is the video that you have all been waiting for. This is the video where I get questions asked dare I say every single week, if not every second week, in my Instagram Q&A. How do I know my family is done? Did you get that feeling of being unfinished? When do I know is the right time to add to my family? How do I know when not to add to my family? Should we have another baby or not? And all of these different versions of questions. And today I'm going to be answering with you how my husband and I had that conversation. How did we know when was the right time to add to our family? What sort of questions did we ask ourselves and each other? What sort of things did we lean into for whether it was like support, financial, time, energy, effort, the way that we parent? All of these things came into factoring how we knew that we wanted to add to our family. And so I thought I would share that process with you because it is so difficult. It is such a huge decision. And I know nobody makes it lightly, but especially if you're like me and it's not easy for you to fall pregnant, you have time to make those decisions, and that makes it even more difficult almost. It's not like your design has taken over that decision making for you. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video, and I hope you enjoy it. If you find it helpful and you get a couple of like tips and tricks or some little ideas, or it's a conversation starter or sparker for you, let me know in the comments below. Give this video a like, subscribe, all of those things that I rarely ask you to do and really should do more often. And let me know also, what were the factors that were like make or break in deciding to add or not add to your family? Okay, so hilariously, I just filmed a video where I had you guys all set up, ready to rock. And of course, my tripod fell down. So apologies for the crappy angle. I don't know, is this gonna be okay? Probably not. Ooh, I need to get myself a new tripod, clearly. How does one even make this work? I feel like it's all over the place. There, that will do, won't it? You can tell I'm clearly such like a YouTube pro. Oh, I'm gonna take a sip of my water before I dive into these questions because, or these like conversation starters. I've written them down on my phone because these are things that would crop up in my mind ahead of time. So we were like a year postpartum with each of our babies, and these were things that would pop into my mind as I was starting to feel ready. For me, it's almost as soon as my cycles return that I start to feel like more ready to have another baby. This is not the same for everyone, but something happens to me hormonally where I like really come back into my body. And so I was able to think a little bit more clearly, and I knew that when I was out of that hormonal phase, that it wasn't just a like instinctive like craving just to have another newborn. So I started then to like put together questions that I would want to like have a sit down conversation with my husband. And we made a deal of this. We were like, okay, let's go out on a lunch date. Sometimes we'd have the kids with us. So depending on, obviously this is going to be baby number 3. Or when we first decided to add to our family, when we had Jess, we were like, it was a meeting without her when she's gone to bed, or it could be just like you get some popcorn and make a sit down thing of it. But for me, I like to have as full attention as possible. I liked there to be time. I liked there to be a piece of paper. I liked there to be like a pros and cons list. So because I know it's such a big deal bringing a baby into our family, and I also know that I take it really seriously. Not that all of us don't, but for those of us who are on our own like healing journeys or healing our own inner child, I knew that I needed to have the capacity and the readiness in so many ways to bring another little one on board. And sorry guys, and with just how like little support we have around, I knew that it was really important to me that we needed to bear that in mind. So here we go. Some of the questions that we asked ourselves and each other, and things that I have written down that I knew were like important to me, and I knew were like I knew were things that I didn't want to pretend weren't there. You know, I needed to talk about them. Okay. Here was the first thing, and the overarching feeling that I brought into the conversation. And that was, if we decide to stay, we'll say this is the last conversation we had, at only 2 plus 3 when Jess is there, my stepdaughter, my bonus daughter, will we grieve that third baby that we never had? Will I always wish and wonder what would have been? And for me, that was like an obvious yes. For Pete, it was also an obvious yes. He's always wanted a larger family. He comes from a family of 4. I only come from a family of 2, but I always knew I wanted a bigger family. I wanted the siblings. I wanted the busyness. I wanted that like hum in our home. So for me, that was an obvious yes, but it's something that I feel like really we maybe don't ask ourselves often enough. We get tied up in the pragmatic, finances and is our home big enough and things like that. And actually, for me, that's the way that I wanted to start this conversation. And then we got into the more pragmatic things. And then after that, I had to really remind myself of like, okay, well, where am I? Where am I at? How am I managing, thriving, maybe not thriving, in parenting the amount of children that we already have? What's my capacity like for more children? And then looking at like, okay, what makes things easier? What makes things harder? What are the things that I would have to do to make sure that I could continue to parent my children as I would like? And for some people, who have larger families, the way that they parent their kids is very different from how I parent mine. We are very hands-on, engaged, like, what's it called? Like attachment style parent, possibly. And so, our kids are home all the time. We don't have childcare. They're raised exclusively by us. And we don't plan on sending them to public school. They are going to be homeschooled. So it means that there's a lot of weight on us. And then I suppose with that, I had to be really mindful of, okay, those days that I'm having that are harder days, if we decide to have another baby now, the baby's not going to arrive tomorrow. The newborn isn't going to all of a sudden be in my arms. It's going to be minimum 9 months before this little one comes around. And so our life is going to look a lot different. I'm going to be that little bit older and hopefully wiser. My children, who I already have, are going to be that little bit older and more capable. And so, remembering that as opposed to thinking about the whole plan, the whole sort of plan to add to our family as being a right now and here thing. So that was really helpful in just remembering that like you're not going to be introducing a newborn tomorrow, instead of getting my head about like, oh my gosh, Archer's still so little and I might be taking away from his childhood. Yeah. So the next thing that we talked about, and this is in no particular order, it was all conversation topics and things that we brought up, is that, house space and car seats. And those are quite pragmatic and practical points. So for us, for instance, if we introduce another baby, it's going to be a family of 6. And that is quite a lot. And so we will need a minivan, or we will certainly need, a 7-seater family carrier. At the moment, we like to drive as small a car as we can, because for us, I prefer to spend money on other things. And we already live, quite frugally. So that's worthwhile bearing in mind. And for me, that is a factor. That is a factor because I don't love driving. I'm driving a bigger vehicle. It's going to feel new and interesting. And that is something that's just going to have to happen with adding another baby. House space is something that really right now doesn't feel important. Our house at the moment, not that we live in a huge house, but right now it's a 3-bedroom house. Potentially, if we were to do some rejigging, it could be a 5-bedroom house. I have my 5-year-old, almost 5-year-old, still in the bed with me. And so the idea of having to do some rejigging, some moving feels very far away. potentially my bonus daughter, who is 12, could move, into a downstairs space. She could be, well into her young adulthood by the time we are no longer bed sharing. Who even knows? And for me, I shared a bedroom with my sister until I was 12, maybe 12. She might correct me on this. And I loved it. And I think it builds a whole new closeness that I really carried on with me into my life in, the ease that I would share, a space with my friends later on and living with other people, but also just the sibling relationship. And I think for me, that's really important. It's a friend for life, and that's not necessarily going to say they're going to get on all of the time, but when our parents are gone, that's who you're left with. So they are the longest relationships that you ever have. So that's really important for me, and I see the relationship that my kids now have, and it's imperative to me that I support that in a way that feels good. And I feel like really until they get to teenagehood, they don't need that dedicated space in the same way. That's not to say they won't hate each other and have little meltdowns and need moments apart, but yeah. So that's something that factored into my mindset in that way. I'm envisioning that at the moment, right beside me, we have like a super king size bed, and we are all in the bed, bar my husband for the most part, because he we'll go into the other room and get a full night's sleep. Jess has a double bed down the bottom in her own room, and then that's like her space. And then I'm assuming or envisioning that the boys will at some point share a bed in like the boys' room. It does sort of change a little bit if we were to have a girl, but at the moment I think bundling them all in together is absolutely fine. And we bed share for so long. Okay, so that was one thing that kind of factored in. Cars, I have had a look at them. They're all so obnoxious and ugly, and it's fine. We'll just have to save up for one that suits us. But yeah, that's another thing, like financially speaking. And then, which sort of cars would fit enough car seats. I would love them all to have like an isofix. They can be rear facing as long as possible. Another thing that I think, this is another point, which I think is always fun, is remembering that the babies are just the now, and that actually the reason that you're expanding your family and the reason we should really be looking forward as opposed to thinking about the now is that who do you envision sitting at the kitchen table, sitting at the dining room table, having a family dinner, maybe on a Sunday? Who do you envision being there? And for us, might sound so silly for some of you, but for me, knowing he was going to come home, and before I start crying, but Pete is a lot older than me. He's 17 years older than me. And so no matter how much he minds himself, my assumption is always that I will be alone for a period of time. And so that's really nice for me to envision who will come home and visit me. So it's sort of selfish. But also we've always had a larger dining room table, and there's always been like these empty seats. And I would love to see those seats filled rather. And that's always felt like those little babies were just like waiting for their time, Yeah, so asking yourself who you want sitting at the table in 10 years' time for family dinners, and that you are having babies, you are not having babies for now. So that's really important for me. Another question that I had to ask myself is, at the moment I am tandem feeding the two boys, and how is that going to look? Now that's a small factor, and it's a very, very personal factor because so many of you who are watching this video are not. But for me, I had to think about like, okay, how is that going to look if we add another one? Am I going to be tri-andem feeding? Would that actually ease that lovely gentle transition? Or am I going to have to look at doing some partial weaning, some total weaning, some gentle parent-led weaning? If you didn't know, this is like an area that I have found myself specializing in, weaning of older children. And those of you who are tandem feeding and want to wean one and not the other, and that sort of thing, in a really like gentle way. So whether that is totally parent-led or leaning into child-led and meeting in the middle, but it's always with children's involvement. And really holding space for them in these big transitions. So I will link my weaning course down below. Okay, so the next question is something that I factored into it a little bit was more important for my husband, and that is, what do people think and say? So he's quite an evidence head. He liked the numbers. He likes to know, well, what do people say is easiest? What do people say is best? What do people say is like the happiest number? And he had done this research ahead of me. And the evidence was telling him, and what people were saying to him was 4 is the happiest number. And so for me, that felt really good because I had actually always envisioned having 4 kids. 4 was the nice number for me because everybody has a little buddy. It felt like it was manageable in a way that I could parent gently and kindly and responsively and give everybody the time that they needed without it being too overwhelming. So that's exciting that we both kind of came to that number and that's what he found in his like research as well. So that's kind of cute and fun and nice, and apparently other people say that 4 is the happiest number is fun. Yeah. And then I suppose the other thing is like age gaps. What is the ideal age gap? For me, again, like when I feel like my period comes back, I come into my body a little bit more, I can start to open my eyes and think about it. However, we have very consciously spaced our boys in a way that meant they were fully potty trained, bearing in mind we do elimination communication, so I'll share that video down below, but it means they're potty trained quite soon. But they're fully potty trained and or are communicating in full sentences. So the smallest age gap that we would have between all of our kids would be 2 years. We have never strived to have 2 under 2 or Irish twins or any of that. And the reason for that is because of the way that I parent, but also I wanted that for ease of transition. So that was important for me. And I feel like I really come out of the bubble. I like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's a world outside of tiny babies when my little ones reach around a year. Like it could be before a year. Before a year for my first, I feel like. But I also really don't want to, and this is not to say that those of you who want smaller age gaps are wrong for doing that. And different things factor into that, like age, timeline, that kind of thing. But for me, I don't want to regret missing out on that precious time when they're so little. Because for me, it goes by so fast, and I already am very much a very empathetic person. I would say I'm a highly sensitive individual, and so I could at the drop of a hat start just like actively grieving every single day that goes by, that my babies get bigger and older and more mature and need me less. And so for me, that was really important that I like honored that time when they're so small. So coming out of the bubble, considering the age gap, what else? Okay. Asking yourself, honestly, openly, finances. How do you plan on raising your kids? What is important for you in the way that they experience the world, in the way that you like to live your life? Would you be open to changing that if your family were to expand? Do you plan on them being in several extracurricular activities? Do you plan on them being in a private versus a public school? Do you plan on having a family holiday every year somewhere abroad that's going to be more pricey? Do you eat only organic foods and don't plan on doing any gardening? Do you wear designer clothes and that's really important to you? All of these things factor into it. And as well, would you have to maybe upgrade the size of your house? Do you have to get a new car? Will you have to work an extortionate amount or change your job role? Will your partner have to change their job role? And all of that factors into it. And for me, I think it's very easy to think, well, babies are really cheap, particularly if you're breastfeeding or a cloth diapering or doing EC. It's really once they get to like a bit older, that they're eating more, that they're doing those extracurricular activities, that it becomes a little bit more expensive, that you're doing a little bit more taxiing maybe. And so that's worthwhile, kind of just relooking at the budget and relooking at that. So for us, it's like the expectant budget. It's like right now and how it's going to look come, you know, when they're that little bit older, when Pete's finished college, when he's, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So finances. And then I suppose the next thing, just like leading on from that, is if you have a partner or not, do they have thoughts on this? Do they have an opinion on this? Do they have a really strong opinion that maybe you never knew about that's really important to them? For me, I'm very, very lucky, but Pete has always been like, I'm down to make a baby with you whenever. He's like, I'm really, really want to expand our family. He has never had any indication to me that he's been like done. He's just like, I love babies. I love babies. I love the babies that I make with you. And I want to just, you know, make as many as feels good within our capacity. That being said, capacity, community, knowing your limits and like acknowledging them. So there are many friends who I have when I've shared with them that we are trying for another baby, have openly said like, kudos to you, because I am done. I'm out. There is no way that I have the capacity for another child. And whether that is in relation to how you feel you might manage another little one, or how much energy you have, or how little sleep you are getting, or how much community you have around you. For me, the last like 4 or 5 years have been really leaning into like, okay, who's out there? Who's parenting the same way as me? Where are the people who want to parent with me? And now I really have that community. I know that I'm not alone. I know that on any given day, if I want to parent, like co-parent with someone, I have that. And I have people who, when I'm having a really hard day, will just talk to me about that and be there for me through those sad moments. And I feel like that is the way that we should be parenting our children. And that's not to say that it's there for everyone, but seeking it out really makes a big difference in terms of, you know, I don't think I would want to bring another child into the world on my own. Does that make sense? So knowing those limits and acknowledging them. And for instance, like for me, recently, one of my dearest best friends moved 3.5 hours away from us. And that really, I had some serious grief around that, because we do a lot of co-parenting and I really did not want to bring another child into the world without her there. And I know that I can do it. And I've been leaning into like, okay, maybe our community needs to expand a little bit, and opening my eyes and my heart to that. So that's been looking interesting. Okay. And then I suppose the other thing is, would I regret it if I didn't have another baby? And then if I have any fears around adding to our family, what are they? And if I have no fear around adding to our family, then what? Then do we start? Do we have a timeline for that? What does that look like? Do we have a cutoff point? Are we maybe an aging family? So for us, that really factored into it. You know, we really didn't want to wait any longer. And while, you know, I was talking to another family and they were saying that it felt really good to them to have like 2 close together and then like a nice long break and then another 2. For us, that wouldn't have been an option, because Pete is getting older and I love to be like a younger mama. If I can even classify myself as that anymore. I'm 32, I don't know. But it was really important to me that my little ones were closer in age, just for ease of like little things, you know. They're all into the playground, for instance, or when they get to the age that they can all go to the cinema or go to the pantomime and really enjoy that, or that they're all doing swimming lessons. You know, I think that that's really helpful. And, you know, certain sort of home ed groups that we've been going to, there are a larger collective of a certain age group, and so that's been appropriate for the majority of them, and that's been really nice and made things a little bit more easeful as well. But this is quite a long waffly video, but here's the list overall of the questions that I would think you need to ask yourself. Should we work backwards? No. Does your partner have an opinion, if you have one? A strong opinion that maybe you're unaware of? Finances. So we're talking about the big things and the small things, but also projectively, if that's a word. If you didn't have this other baby and you decide to only stick with the amount of family that you have now, will you grieve that third or subsequent baby that you never had? Then you're talking about space, like house space, car seats, sleeping situations. Are you co-sleeping? Do you have a bunk bed with with a queen at the bottom? What do others say? We know that they're saying 4 is the happiest number. The way that you parent, what's your capacity for that like? What's your community like? What's your support like? Maybe you've got a really supportive family. And remembering that you are not having babies for now, you're having babies for 10 years time, and who's going to be sitting at the family dinners. Reminding yourself that you're not going to introduce a newborn tomorrow, that it's at least 9 months, if not more, before that little one comes around, and things will look different. Considering the age gap, coming out of that bubble, how's that going to look? And then I suppose if you would regret it or not, and then what sort of fears you might have, what those are, and then what? What is the answer after that? So those are all things that we talk about, that we had a conversation about every single time we decided to add to our family. They have been things that have been really important for me and really important for Pete in knowing that this is the right decision. And so in falling pregnant with each baby, when it happened, there was nothing but the feeling of like overwhelming dread of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Have we like ruined our kids' lives? Simply wasn't there. It was instead a feeling of just being able to dive into that love and that excitement of knowing what is to come, and knowing that actually we've done the pros and cons list and that this is so right for us. Okay. So that is the end of my should we have another baby video. I know it's a little bit rambly, a little bit long. I hope it's been helpful. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you have utilized some of these tools and tips and tricks. Perhaps I should create like a PDF document with a list of them, but for the moment you've got this video to refer to, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.